My name is Ethan Walker. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who had to tell this kind of story. But here I am. I'm 35. I live in Austin, Texas. And I used to think I had everything figured out when it came to faith. I was raised in church, saved at 17, baptized in college, and I stayed on the path. Ministry, worship team, volunteering, the whole thing. I loved Jesus, and I meant it. Still do. I thought that was enough. But I also had tattoos. 5 of them, each one carefully chosen. The lion on my arm, boldness, the Hebrew lettering across my ribs, God's covenant love, the crown on my shoulder, my identity in Christ. Nothing dark, nothing random. Every piece was intentional, spiritual. I even used scripture to defend it. God looks at the heart. We're not under law anymore. People at church didn't really question it. Some even thought it was cool, asked me where I got mine done. I shared my testimony like it was printed in ink. My social media grew. People followed me for the message and the style. And yeah, I thought I was making an impact. But what I didn't realize was that sometimes the things we use to express God can quietly become about ourselves. Before we go further, if this kind of story resonates with you, I want you to take a second, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment if you've ever questioned where the line is between culture and conviction, and keep watching. Because what happened next changed everything. It was a Thursday night, nothing unusual, just another evening at home. I had just stepped out of the shower, drying off, thinking about the emails I hadn't answered and the content I was supposed to post in the morning. Life was fast, always moving, but I didn't mind. I liked the pace, liked feeling productive, useful. I remember grabbing my towel, phone buzzing on the counter, some DMs waiting. Then it hit me, out of nowhere, this crushing pressure in my chest like an iron hand tightening around my ribs. My first thought, probably stress. Maybe I skipped too many meals again. But then my arms went numb, my legs buckled. I hit the ground hard. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. And in that moment, just before the darkness swallowed me, I remember thinking, this can't be how it ends. But it didn't end. Not really. I opened my eyes, but I wasn't in my body anymore. I was hovering, floating above the bathroom floor, staring at myself motionless on the tile. One hand still gripping the towel, my phone lighting up with a call I'd never answer. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't panicked. Something was pulling me upward, strong but peaceful, like gravity in reverse. The walls around me faded, the ceiling disappeared, and the next thing I knew, I was surrounded by light, not white, not blinding, but alive. The kind of light that feels like it remembers who you were before you ever learned shame. It wrapped around me like memory, like a song I hadn't heard since before I was born. That's when I saw him, Jesus. He didn't descend in trumpets or thunder. He was just there, like he had always been there, waiting. No need to speak his name. I knew it was him. His eyes, I can't explain them. They weren't just looking at me. They were inside me, moving through my memories, my motives, my excuses. And still, there was no anger, just sorrow. Deep sorrow, like a father watching his son carry something he never meant to carry. I tried to speak. I tried to say his name, but my voice wouldn't come out. I just stood there, exposed.
You carry more than ink.
That's what he said, soft, but stronger than thunder. And I knew, instantly, he wasn't talking about just tattoos. I tried to respond, tried to explain that they were for him, every single one. The verses, the meanings, the declarations of faith. I wanted to say, "Lord, these were my testimony." But he raised his hand and my thoughts froze like glass. I didn't feel judged. I felt revealed. Then it happened. Jesus reached out, not to touch me, but to show me myself. In a blink, I saw my body in a way I never had before, through the eyes of the Spirit. My skin was lit up with a strange glow, each tattoo radiating some kind of spiritual frequency. Some of them shimmered with light, others pulsed with distortion, like static in a perfect song. One of them burned, just a small symbol on my ankle, a shape I barely remembered choosing. Something I thought looked cool once, but now it scorched in the spirit like a brand. I looked at him, pleading silently, and he nodded, almost in pain himself.
My people do not understand the weight of what they wear.
That sentence pierced me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was still holding on to the idea that my intentions had been pure, that my theology had been right. Grace, not law. New covenant, not Leviticus. But this wasn't about law. This was about ownership, identity, covenant. And I had treated it like decoration.
Some markings invite covenants they never made with me.
I broke inside, because I could feel it. The gap, the disconnect. I had meant to honor him. I really had. But in my desire to express something holy, I had unknowingly made agreements. Spiritual agreements, with symbols I never understood. I had carried images into worship, into prayer, into ministry, that bore meanings I never researched. Designs rooted in ancient defiance, modern mysticism, even occult rebellion. All hidden under the banner of personal freedom, art, expression.
Intention is not the same as revelation.
He said it like a whisper, but it shook me like an earthquake. And it made sense, because suddenly I saw how far we've drifted, how easily we cloak rebellion in creativity, how we call everything art and ignore its origin. We wear symbols from cultures that bled for false gods, carry sigils that once summoned darkness, all because it looks cool or feels meaningful. And we call it freedom.
What feels harmless on earth may carry weight in the spirit.
I began to cry, not because he shamed me, but because I could finally see it, all of it, the self-will, the blind spots, the unintentional altars I'd raised through ink. And I thought about the people I had influenced, the followers who mirrored my faith and my style, the ones who I followed him, without question, without hesitation. Not because I understood everything, but because in that moment, he was the only thing that felt real, the light that surrounded him. It wasn't just light, it was like stepping into truth itself. It peeled away noise, silence flooded everything, but it wasn't empty, it was weighty. Every step I took felt like walking deeper into something ancient, something eternal, something I was always meant to be part of, but never knew how to enter. Jesus led. I followed. No map, no time, just movement. As we crossed into what felt like another realm, the world behind me faded completely. No ceiling, no ground, no sky, just dimension. Alive, aware, endless. And yet, I felt more seen here than I ever did on Earth. My heart beat, or maybe it didn't. I don't know, but I felt it in a way that had nothing to do with blood. I could remember everything at once. Every sermon I preached, every time I used grace as a cover for ignorance, Every conversation where I told someone God knows your heart while avoiding deeper truth. It all came rushing back, not to shame me, but to wake me up. Then Jesus stopped. Ahead of us was something I still can't put into words. A veil, not like cloth, but like a wall of presence, glowing, vibrating, as if it knew secrets the world had forgotten. Jesus turned to me, not with command, but with invitation.
Come, I must show you what marks mean in the kingdom.
And just like that, the veil opened. I walked through with him, and my breath left me. What I saw wasn't a vision. It was a realm, alive with history, not written in books, but woven in spirit. It wasn't just images or symbols. It was memory, eternal memory, moving like waves. Every event, every covenant, every rebellion and surrender, alive. I saw stories I never read, names I never knew, but somehow I understood it all. Jesus lifted his hand, and my eyes opened in a way I had never known. Not physical sight, but soul sight. Suddenly, I saw Adam and Eve walking in the garden, not naked the way we think, but clothed in light. Their bodies radiated the image of God like flame. No shame, no pride, only glory. Then I saw it, the fall, and with it, the shift. The light dimmed. They looked down at themselves, for the first time aware of skin, of the outside, of separation. The glory had covered them. Now they needed coverings of their own. It wasn't just about clothes. It was about identity. Broken, fractured, and that fracture has echoed through every generation since. I saw Cain, trembling, blood on his hands. God marked him, not to curse, but to protect. A spiritual imprint, a consequence, but also mercy. The first human mark wasn't about beauty. It was about covenant, ownership. Then time sped forward, centuries in a second. Pagan tribes, cutting themselves, painting their skin with blood and ash, desperate to call down spirits, desperate to be noticed by the gods they worshipped. Egypt, Canaan, Babylon, their bodies covered in sigils and symbols to please the dead, to summon fertility, to honor war. And then came Israel. I saw Moses, the priests, the temple. Their bodies had no ink, but they were marked by something stronger. Holiness, consecration, set apart. Not like the nations, no idols, no cuts, no tattoos for the dead. I saw Leviticus 19:28, not written in text, but etched in flame. It wasn't legalism, it was identity. You don't mark what you don't own. And God was saying, "You are mine."
You were never meant to mark yourself. You were meant to be marked by me.
His voice was fire, but it didn't burn. It clarified. And suddenly I realized, we don't get to write our stories on our skin when He's already written them in His hands. The prophets I saw, they didn't carry ink. They carried fire in their bones. The apostles, their scars weren't symbols. They were the price of obedience. Beatings, chains, crosses, not art.
My people have forgotten they are already marked.
I broke again, because I had forgotten too. I had tried to make my body testify when my spirit hadn't fully surrendered. I thought I was bold, but I had missed the weight. I had turned sacred into style, worship into branding. And the enemy, he didn't need to possess me. He just needed me to be ignorant. Jesus moved, and the realm shifted again. I saw thousands of believers, people just like me, walking in churches, raising hands, preaching sermons, posting verses. But their bodies carried marks that glowed in the spirit, not all bad, but some twisted, some opened, some pulsed with sorrow or shame. And over those marks, I saw shadows, not demons possessing, but watching, clinging, feeding. And the more I watched, the more I realized the spiritual realm doesn't need our permission. It just needs our ignorance.
What isn't surrendered is still claimable.
That's when the weight of the journey really hit me. I wasn't being led on a tour. I was being shown the courtroom of eternity. Evidence, contracts, spiritual patterns, things we dismiss because we only look with human eyes. But the Spirit doesn't miss anything. Every mark, every symbol, every name we carve into our flesh, heaven sees it, and so does hell. And suddenly, I wanted to go back, not because I missed the world, but because I needed to warn it. I had followers, friends, people who thought like me, who defended their ink like I did, who needed to see what I was seeing now. But Jesus wasn't done yet. There was more to reveal, more to redeem, and what came next would show me the darkest truth of all. Before we get to that, if you've made it this far, take a second right now, subscribe, because this next part is the moment that shattered me, and it might just save someone you love. I thought I had seen the worst, but Jesus wasn't showing me horror, he was showing me reality. Reality most of us never see because we never ask. As we moved deeper into this realm, the atmosphere grew heavier, not with fear, but with truth. It was like walking through a mirror, watching the difference between what we believe is spiritual and what actually is. Jesus didn't have to speak. The realm spoke for him. I began seeing people, believers, some I recognized, some I didn't. They looked normal. Some were in church pews, some in coffee shops, some in prayer rooms. But in the spirit, there was more. Certain tattoos on their bodies pulsed faintly, not with light, but with something else. I saw one man. He had a lion tattoo across his chest. It looked noble, powerful. He said it was about courage, even posted it on social media with verses about boldness. But in the spirit, that lion wasn't roaring. It was branded, old, tribal, and dark. It carried the echo of a blood covenant made centuries ago, long before this man was born. That tattoo had history, and it wasn't holy. Then I saw a girl, barely out of her teens, a snake wrapped around her forearm. She told her friends it was ironic. She thought it was edgy. But in the spirit, that snake moved. It coiled every time she worshipped. It didn't control her, but it mocked her, like it had been given a seat at the table she didn't even know existed. I watched her lift her hands, and in the spirit, the serpent curled tighter, invisible to her, but visible here. I was horrified. These weren't demons crashing in through the front door. These were ancient agreements, opened in ignorance, never revoked.
My people perish for lack of knowledge.
Jesus' voice broke through like thunder wrapped in sorrow. He wasn't angry. He was grieved. Not all tattoos were evil. Not all marks were dangerous. But many were gateways. And the enemy didn't need your rebellion. He just needed your permission. And sometimes, all it takes to give him that is to imitate something you never understood.
They think it's art, but heaven sees agreement.
That one hit hard, because I had been one of them. I had posted pictures, told stories, crafted narratives about each of my tattoos. And people followed, people copied, People asked for the same Hebrew script, the same cross design, the same abstract symbol I once thought looked cool. And Jesus showed me, not all of those designs were born in the light. Some were borrowed from twisted doctrine, others rooted in mysticism, symbols that look Christian, but were never sanctified by God. And every time someone duplicated that design, they weren't just copying ink, they were echoing agreement.
Spiritual designs must be birthed in spiritual truth.
He showed me one of my own tattoos again. The dove. Peace, I had thought, but in the spirit, it was stained, not from darkness, but distortion. I had pulled the design from a site that mixed scripture with mysticism. The imagery wasn't clean. The spirit behind it wasn't light. I had taken something sacred from a source that was unclean, and I had worn it proudly, not just on my body, but as part of my witness. And others had followed. I felt sick. I felt responsible. And still, Jesus wasn't condemning me. He was revealing me.
You cannot disciple people in darkness while you're still wearing it.
I wanted to run, but where would I go? I wanted to scream, but there was no air. I fell again into his presence, not in fear, but in surrender. Lord, I didn't know. I didn't know. My mind was spinning. How many symbols in our culture do we glorify without asking? How many mantras do we tattoo onto our skin that were once incantations? How many verses do we ink, not because they guide us, but because they feel trendy, and we never ask, never test the spirit, never bring it to Jesus? And that's when he showed me the worst. I saw influencers, Christian ones, with massive followings, worship leaders, YouTubers, pastors, standing on platforms, showing off tattoos. Some of the tattoos were sincere, some not. But the problem wasn't just the ink, it was the influence. Their followers saw it and copied it. Thousands, tens of thousands, repeating designs birthed in compromise. Not all, but some. And those symbols, some of them were not clean. Some had been inspired by cultures soaked in witchcraft, ancient blood rituals, rebellion against God. And now, they were being replicated by believers across nations in the name of faith.
What you wear, you multiply.
That sentence wrecked me, because I had always thought of my platform as a way to reach people. I never thought it could also be a way the enemy reached people through me. I didn't mean to mislead, but that didn't erase the impact. Spiritual ignorance, no matter how innocent, still carries weight. I asked Jesus, what now? What do I do with what I've shown others? What about the ones I influenced? And he looked at me.
You are not condemned, but you must be cleansed.
His eyes burned with mercy, not shame. He wasn't calling me guilty. He was calling me responsible. There's a difference. And in that moment, I understood why he brought me here. Not to punish, but to awaken. To set something straight in the spirit. Not just for me, but for everyone who's ever confused freedom with faithfulness. Who's ever assumed their body is their canvas, without asking whose image it was meant to reflect. If you're hearing this right now, if something in your spirit is stirring, don't brush it off. Ask the Holy Spirit. Ask Him about what you wear, what you've marked, what you've copied without prayer. Ask Him to show you the spiritual resonance of what you think is harmless, because what's harmless in your eyes may still be a signal in the spirit realm. Stay with me, because what Jesus showed me next would flip everything. The most painful moment, the most powerful transformation, it's coming. And if you haven't yet, click subscribe, because you need to hear this next part. Trust me, It's not just about tattoos anymore. I thought I had seen enough, thought the worst had already been shown. But Jesus wasn't done, and neither was the truth. He turned to me, and suddenly, everything around us shifted again. The realm dimmed, not with darkness, but with exposure. The light that once comforted, now revealed, not in cruelty, but in clarity. He raised his hand, and I saw myself fully, entirely, as I was in the spirit. My body appeared before me, glowing faintly, but with fractures, threads of distortion wrapped around certain symbols inked onto my skin. At first I didn't understand. Then I saw it. The small abstract tattoo on my ankle, the one I barely remembered getting. Something I found online years ago. Just a cool design. But now, I saw it through different eyes. The symbol flickered, not with light, but with rebellion. Jesus looked at me, and what he said broke something deep inside me.
This one was never yours to wear.
I felt crushed. I tried to speak, to explain I didn't know what it meant, that it was just for style, just art. But in this realm, there are no half-truths, no justifications. What was hidden is visible. That tattoo. He showed me its origin. I saw ancient rituals, a sigil used to summon self-will, to sever spiritual alignment, to declare independence from divine authority. I had worn it, clueless, and it had written something into my life I never consented to, but had agreed to by action. The spiritual world doesn't need you to believe in it, to be affected by it.
Ignorance does not cancel agreement.
That sentence slammed into me. I thought I was safe because I loved God. I thought love was enough. But Jesus wasn't condemning me. He was showing me how serious it is to bear symbols without surrender. And that was the wound I didn't expect. Not the demonic, not the deception, but the realization that I had led others into what I never questioned myself. My voice online, my influence, the people who mirrored my designs because I said they were meaningful. I had opened doors for them without knowing.
You led them with your ink, but not with my voice.
I dropped to my knees. My hands trembled. The weight of responsibility wasn't theoretical anymore. It was eternal. And I saw them, the followers, the ones who had copied my tattoos, the ones who trusted my version of faith. Some of them carried the same mark, slightly altered, modernized, stylized, and now they too pulsed in the spirit with static. I felt like screaming, but I couldn't. I just wept. This wasn't just about art anymore. This was spiritual inheritance, being corrupted through carelessness. I looked at Jesus, ashamed, broken. I whispered, I didn't mean to. I didn't know. His eyes didn't flare with anger. They flooded with grief. Not at me, but for me, and for them. For everyone walking blindly under the banner of self-expression, without ever asking what kingdom they're expressing. And then, he did something I didn't expect. He showed me how the enemy sees. He reached toward me, and suddenly I was looking through eyes that were not his, not mine, but ancient, watching from the edges. I saw people in the real world, believers, worshipers, pastors, influencers, walking through life, praying, preaching, singing, and some of their tattoos glowed like beacons, signals, not to heaven, but to things darker. Not all, but some. The ones born in rebellion, or rooted in false covenants. They pulsed in patterns hell understood, like invitations that were never revoked. Some had no idea. Some had done it with full knowledge, others with naivety. But none were invisible in the spirit, and I saw shadows clinging, not possessing, but permitted. Legalistic spirits, ancient, cold, calculating, patient. They didn't attack, they waited, attached, feeding not on fear, but on ignorance, on pride, on unchecked identity.
Hell doesn't need to invade. When you hand it a key,
My mind felt like it was unraveling. I couldn't believe how blind I had been, and worse, how loud I had been while being blind. I wanted him to erase everything, burn the ink, wipe it clean. But Jesus didn't reach for my skin. He reached for my heart, and when he touched the air above my chest, it was like a fire went through my soul, a holy fire, not to punish, but to purify.
you are not shamed. You are being called higher.
That broke me, again. Because in all the revelation, all the exposure, he had never once turned away from me. He wasn't pushing me out. He was pulling me up, calling me out of ignorance, out of self, into truth, into surrender. And I finally understood. This wasn't about ink. It was about ownership. Whose image do I bear? Whose truth do I wear? Who gets to tell my story? I looked at him through tears, trembling, undone. Lord, can your mark cover what I've done? Can you redeem what I've handed to the wrong spirit?
My blood is stronger than your ink.
That was all he said. And I knew, right then, he could, he would, if I let him. But first, I had to bring it all into the light. No more half measures. No more hiding behind scripture without surrender. No more using grace as a license to ignore truth. I had to lay it all down and trust him to make something holy from what I once wore as art. And that was the beginning of something I had never expected. Not cleansing, not correction, but transformation. The next moment, Jesus showed me what redemption really looks like, and it left a mark on me no ink ever could. If you're still listening, don't scroll, don't skip. What's coming next is the part that flipped everything. You need to hear what heaven does when you surrender what hell once claimed. Subscribe now, because this next part might be the most important thing I've ever said. Jesus didn't erase me, he redeemed me, and that changed everything. When he reached toward me, I didn't feel fear, I felt fire, but not the kind that destroys, the kind that restores, the kind that burns away what doesn't belong, and leaves behind only what's eternal. His hand hovered over my heart, and in that instant, I felt it. Something inside me cracked open. Not my chest, my spirit. A wave of purity moved through me, like every lie I'd ever believed about myself was being washed away, every false agreement breaking, every hidden vow dissolving.
Now I will show you how heaven marks what is mine.
Those words didn't echo. They etched into something deeper than memory. And just like that, I saw them, the ones truly marked by heaven, not with ink, but with presence. Their bodies didn't glow with perfection. They glowed with possession. They didn't look holy because of what they wore. They looked holy because of who they belonged to. I saw one woman kneeling in a small room, no audience, no platform, just prayer. But in the spirit, her back was marked with fire, the fire of intercession. And every time she opened her mouth, darkness broke around her. Then I saw a man, silent, overlooked by the world, but marked with surrender. In heaven, his name thundered like a war cry. I saw another, young, radiant, marked with purity, not innocence, but purity forged in warfare. Temptation tried to touch her, but it slid off her spirit like oil on fire. And I realized These weren't tattoos. These were testimonies. These were the real marks, earned not by ink, but by obedience, forged not in studios, but in secret places. Their scars weren't for style. They were stories, surrendered, sealed, sacred.
You were never meant to mark yourself. You were meant to be marked by me.
That truth pierced me, because I finally saw what I had traded. I had worn designs that I thought told my story, but the truth is, I was writing my identity in ink, while heaven had already written it in light. I had claimed symbols of God, but never asked God if they were His. And now, standing in this realm, I wanted nothing more than His mark, the one only He could give. I looked at Him, pleading, "Can your mark really cover mine? Can you make holy what I profaned?" And without hesitation, He reached for the one tattoo that had burned the most. The sigil I thought was meaningless. His hand didn't touch my skin. It touched the spirit behind it. And as He did, I watched it change, not disappear, transform. The distortion faded, the burn dimmed, and a new frequency emerged. It no longer pulsed rebellion, it radiated redemption.
Because you brought it into the light, now I will use it.
Tears fell from my face like rivers, not because of shame, but because of relief. All this time, I thought Jesus wanted to erase my past, but He didn't. He wanted to redeem it. He wasn't asking me to pretend I never made those choices. He was asking me to surrender them, so He could turn scars into signs, ink into intercession, mistakes into mercy. He wasn't interested in perfection. He was after permission. My yes, and I gave it. Right there, in that realm of light, I gave Him everything. Every tattoo, every symbol, every belief I'd built around them, every person I had influenced, every platform I had used. I laid it down, not because He demanded it, but because I couldn't carry it anymore. And when I did, I felt something I had never felt before: belonging. Not religious conformity, but holy identity. And it didn't come from erasing the past. It came from letting Him rewrite it.
My mercy doesn't erase who you were. It restores who you are.
That sentence broke every lie I didn't know I still believed. Lies that said I had to be cool to be accepted. Lies that said I had to look spiritual to be spiritual. Lies that said my value was in what people saw, not what He sealed. I let them all fall, and in their place came fire. Not a fire of judgment, a fire of ownership. He placed His hand over my chest again, and I felt it. A mark, a seal, not written in ink, but in eternity. I knew hell could see it. I knew heaven had released it. And I knew, from that moment on, I no longer wore my story. I bore His. I looked back at Jesus, trembling, but whole. And in His eyes, I saw what I was always searching for, not just forgiveness, but mission. He wasn't sending me back to stay quiet. He was sending me back to speak, not to shame people for their marks, but to awaken them to the truth. The truth that they were never meant to tell their story in symbols. They were meant to live it in surrender. If you're listening right now, I want to ask you something, not as a preacher, not as an influencer, but as someone who saw the difference. Whose mark are you wearing? Whose voice are you following when you choose what stays on your skin? If you haven't asked Jesus, maybe it's time, because what came next was the moment everything turned. When I saw the church and how close we are to fire. If you've come this far, don't stop now. Subscribe. Stay with me. What Jesus showed me next wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. The light began to fade, not because it grew dim, but because I was being pulled back. I didn't want to leave, not because I feared the world, but because I finally understood what it meant to belong. I had just received a mark that no one could see, but all of heaven recognized. I had been sealed, not with judgment, but with mercy. And now, I was being sent. There was no warning, no countdown. 1 second I was standing in glory, the next, I was crashing back into weight. Breath, pain, noise, machines beeping, voices shouting, fluorescent lights burning above me. My chest ached, my mouth was dry, and my body felt heavy, like I had been gone for a century. But it wasn't the physical pain that hit me, it was the absence of presence. I had been standing before Jesus, and now I was surrounded by wires and alarms. Doctors told me I had suffered a sudden cardiac collapse. No warning, no obvious cause. They said I was lucky to be alive, that someone found me just in time. But I knew better. I hadn't just come back, I had been sent back. I didn't survive. I was recommissioned. When they wheeled me into recovery, I asked for a mirror. It felt strange, but I needed to see it for myself. I stared into the glass, same eyes, same skin, same tattoos, but I wasn't the same. The designs hadn't changed, but their meaning had. They were no longer my story. They were part of a bigger one. They were no longer the loudest voice. They were quiet, almost faded in importance. Because now, I bore something deeper. I carried a mark not written in lines or symbols, but in surrender. And even though no one could see it, I knew hell could feel it, and heaven had written it. I began noticing things, subtle but real. The way I looked at people changed. The way I listened. The way I prayed. I stopped trying to brand myself as a believer. I stopped trying to prove anything. I started asking different questions. Not how does this look, but who does this glorify? I started warning others, not from fear, but from truth. Because I had seen what few ever see. Not the darkness, but what the darkness sees when it looks at us. And I couldn't stay silent, not anymore.
You will not return to shame them. You will return to awaken them.
That was the last thing he said before I came back, and those words have stayed with me every moment since. I didn't get a second chance just to survive. I got it to sound the alarm, to wake up a church that's asleep in symbols, drowning in self-expression, while the spirit realm watches with legal access. I don't preach against tattoos. I preach about asking first, about surrender, about alignment, because God doesn't want your silence. He wants your permission to speak into every part of you, even the parts you call art, even the marks you think are harmless. And when you give him access, when you bring it into the light, he does what only he can do. He redeems it. So now, every time someone asks me about my tattoos, I don't give them the trendy explanation anymore. I don't point them to a verse or a hashtag. I tell them the truth. I tell them about the moment Jesus looked at me and said,
My blood is stronger than your ink.
I tell them about the mark you can't see, but never forget. And I tell them that if he did it for me, he can do it for anyone. If you're still here, listening, watching, something inside you is being stirred. Maybe you've been carrying marks you never questioned. Maybe you've been trusting your own meaning more than his voice. But it's not too late to ask. It's not too late to surrender. It's not too late to be marked by something greater. And what comes next? What you decide to do with what you've heard, that's what really matters. Because you were never meant to walk back into the world unchanged. If this message stirred something in you, don't scroll past it. Don't silence what the Spirit might be whispering. Because what if this wasn't just a story? What if this was a warning? For you, for someone you love, for a generation drowning in self-expression, forgetting surrender. Ask Him. Ask Jesus what you carry, what you've agreed to, what marks you've never questioned. And if He speaks, listen. If He reveals, respond. Don't argue with truth when it shows up with mercy. And if this story opened your eyes, if it cut through the noise, I need you to do something now. Subscribe, right now. Not for me, but so you don't miss what's coming next. There's more I have to share. More He's told me to say. And I believe He led you here on purpose. Leave a comment below. Tell me what resonated. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who thinks they're fine, but deep down, they've never asked whose voice is behind their choices. We're building something here, not a platform, a wake-up call. And I believe, if we start bringing our marks into the light, He'll start marking us with fire. Don't trade His seal for a symbol He never asked for. Subscribe, share, and ask Him. He always answers surrender.